change of seasons and a season of change. New paint schemes, driver lineups, revolutionary rules and a variation to the point score. This year's Supercar also heads to China and Phillip Island is back on the calendar. Although the Albert Park races don't count toward the championship, there's enormous interest in what's traditionally considered a form guide for the series.
Gone are the days where you go to the Grand Prix and the support races and just tool around and make it to the end so that you know the car's in good shape for Clipsal 500. I mean, you go to Albert Park to win the thing. That's a fact of the matter.
Craig Lowndes is a former winner at Albert Park, but that was in Holden War paint. His tenure at Ford hasn't been anywhere near as successful, and he changed teams again during the break. 888 has a strong engineering backbone, and this season will be using Stone Brothers power plants.
I'm confident the car's got the goods to do it. I'm confident that we can be at the front of the field. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of getting everything together and making sure that on the day you put all the pieces together right.
888 has completely changed its front line, signing Stephen Ellery as Lowndes' teammate. Ford Performance Racing has lured Jason Bright from Holden to fill the vacancy left by Lowndes. Bright has been busy over the summer, establishing his own team as well.
The idea was if I've got the right people running it, then I can just concentrate on my driving. So obviously there was a fair bit of my time spent towards the end of last year getting a lot of those things in place, but now it's their job to get the results.
After winning the Sandown 500, Greg Ritter gets a break as Bright's teammate at FPR. Four-time Bathurst winner Greg Murphy is settling in at PWR, a team that's undergone plenty of change over summer. On Monday, HRT conducted a shakedown at Phillip Island and compared the older V8 Commodore aerodynamic package against the new VZ.
Well, we have to do that back-to-back as a proper aero test because this is now the first time that we've run VZ, the latest front on the car. So we're going to do that. And we've also got the new car that Todd's been running. So there's been lots of sort of work that we've had to do in the background. It's been pretty encouraging so far.
Kelly is due to give his new car its first race hit out in Melbourne. And after a disastrous 04 season, Scaife is hoping to get back in the winner's circle on a regular basis this year. 3 more round victories will help him eclipse Peter Brock's record and become the winningest touring car driver in Australian history. Sporting a similar paint scheme are the Commodores of Rick Kelly and Garth Tander. Launched on Thursday, the HSV dealer team will be a force this year. Dick Johnson Racing has gone through a summer makeover and 2-time champion Glenn Seaton has come on board. Last year's Development Series champion Andrew Jones steps up with Gary Rogers' team. His uncle Brad has secured a new backer and John Bowe ensures an unchanged driver lineup. New Zealanders Paul Ranasich and Craig Baird are on the move. The Rat takes Baird's spot at Team Kiwi, while Baird heads to WPS to partner David Bernard. Porsche Carrera Cup champion Alex Davison will campaign a Perkins Engineering prepped Commodore, and his brother Will joins Tony Longhurst at a new-look Team Dynamic. Tasman Motorsport is now Melbourne-based and has expanded to 2 cars. Russell Ingall is close to signing a new 3-year deal with the Stone Brothers. This team is making a concerted effort to try and win Bathurst this year, but not at the expense of a 3rd straight title. The champion seems to be taking an almost philosophical approach.
And that's what I'm looking for. I'm only looking 12 months down the road here. The future with the Stones and with Ford and everyone, will take care of itself in time, but to do 3 in a row would be creating some history, so I'm really dedicated to trying to do that.
Marcus Ambrose and his rivals will be out on track very soon. We'll be back after the break. Light rain falling for race 2 of the V8 Supercars, sponsored by Qantas this weekend. A couple of drivers to watch out for. Stephen Ellery has gained 8 positions from race 1, starting in 15th. Will Davison gained 5 positions to start in P13. Paul Wheel gained 7 positions to start in P12. Further up the grid, Greg Ritter improved from 3 positions to 9th. Jason Bright improved 3 positions, or dropped 3 positions to be 5th. So he's got to make up some ground. But Marcus Ambrose starting P2 here. A great front row battle with Todd Kelly after picking up 3 spots yesterday. Your commentators, Neil Crompton and Lee Diffie.
Thanks, Billy. And Todd Kelly, first ever win at the Formula 1 race here in Melbourne. Great way to start the weekend and the new year, and how they finished yesterday is how they line up today in race 2 of the Qantas V8 Supercars. It's Todd Kelly from Marcus Ambrose. Row 2 is Mark Scaife, Russell Ingall. They had a tremendous fight, and Ingall in fact halved his grid spot from yesterday. Jason Bright, Cam McConville, a tremendous effort from McConville yesterday, and to Jason Bright, although he went backwards at the end of the race, but his first run in FPR, nice work. Radicic for his first run in Team Kiwi Racing, also very impressive, and Stephen Richards had a tough battle on his hands. Ritter and Steve Johnson in the top 10, and Steve Johnson went from 15th to 10th, so nice work there. John Bow, we need to give you a heads up on him. John is on slick tyres out there at the moment, so too his BOC teammate Brad Jones. They are going to be slipping and sliding everywhere. We work our way back to Jason Richards, Anthony Tratt, Craig Baird and Mark Winterbottom in the 20th position in car 20. Alex Davison and David Bernard, Andrew Jones, who has had a troublesome weekend in his debut for Repco Valvoline Cummins, and Brad Jones, as I just mentioned about that tyre situation. Matthew White for Team Brightech, Paul Morris too has had a troublesome weekend. Bargwanna was caught up in the middle of an incident yesterday. Greg Murphy had problems in his PWR Super Cheap Commodore. We get back to Longhurst, who was involved in a skirmish with Brad Jones. Tander spun off late in the race, so too Craig Lowndes, and Rick Kelly was involved in that incident with Jason Bargwanna.
There is some possibility that if the conditions are bad enough, soon enough, this race could start under the control of the safety car. We'll keep you updated on that, but for the time being, to the best of our knowledge, though, we'll make a standing start. There's John Bow in car 12, and if our information's correct, both Brad Jones Racing, Team BOC Gases cars are on slick tyres. And that being the case, those fellas are in for a little bit of excitement in the coming moments. And in fact, it surprises me a little, because if they are on slicks, I'm surprised they didn't actually come to the pit lane and rattle the wet straight on and start the race from the pit lane. Maybe they've got some information, they're looking at the radar and they figure that the weather's going to improve. Might be a different radar to the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, mind you, this is almost double the length of yesterday's race. Yesterday's 10 laps, today 19. And we'll keep an eye on John Bow, because John is right in the thick of things in 11th place. So we'll see how he fares. Mind you, also, they need to err a little bit on the cautious side. The first round of the V8 Supercar Championship Series is only 2 weeks away. The Clipsal 500 at Adelaide.
Very point that I was going to make, Lee. Right at the moment, not a good idea to come away from this event with a transporter full of busted nuts and bolts. It just plunges the workshop into chaos at precisely the wrong moment in the season. It appears as though we're going to get the green flag for an all clear at the back of the field for a standing start for this second V8 Supercar battle, brought to you by Qantas on the Grand Prix circuit here at Albert Park. 5.3 kilometres of V8 action about to explode on a very wet and slippery track as we focus on the lights, set for a start.
It's Holden Racing Team and Stone Brothers Racing, 2 on 2 at the front of the grid, and Kelly has got a great start. Ambrose has bogged it down. He's overtaken by his teammate Scaife, and it's Bright up the outside. Look at the Caterpillar Ford. Ingle defends on the inside from his teammate. Scaife follows his teammate through, and Bright slots into third. We've lost one. That's Stephen John. No, it's not. That is Greg Ritter gone around.
Yeah, there was a 3-into-2 scenario down there at turn 1. And the car in the middle, whoever it was, got pinched, and Ritter came off second best on the outside. I got a glimpse of it, but not the full details. As it was yesterday, Todd Kelly making full benefit of the clear track. And there's always action up here at turn 3. Do they get through here safely today?
Looks like it. And look at this, Ambrose has got ahead of Russell Ingles, so nifty work there. I thought the Falcon that went around was Stephen Johnson, but he's made good work of it and already got his way by Cameron McConville. So a positive start. Look at this. Greg Murphy's right in the thick of things as well with Alex Davison. Oh, there's contact there, and Radicic has gone. Murphy, the 2 PWR Super Cheap cars.
Both of them in trouble there, and one of the Gary Rogers cars, I think, was in trouble. That was Radicic and Stephen Richards getting in strife, and the safety cars being deployed as Ambrose comes up the inside of Jason Bright at turn 9.
So just when we thought they were all in the clear, chaos out there on the Albert Park circuit. It's the 2 Holden Racing Team Commodores up front.
See the yellow flags being waved, the SC boards being deployed, so drivers seeing that need to recognise it, lift off. If they have passed or are in the process of passing anybody, they need to readdress, and that's a pretty heavy shunt there And both those cars, this is precisely what I was talking about at the start of the race. This is exactly what they do not need going to Adelaide for the first round of the championship. Heavy damage. And Paul Wheel Racing at the end of last year's championship from Bathurst onwards was just in the wars with cars forever on jigs and being straightened up, and it was a shocking time for them. Car number 48 in trouble as well, and he limps back to the pits.
David Bernard.
That looks like it's got fairly substantial damage. So there was a bit of nonsense back in the pack somewhere up around turn 5. They got through 3 cleanly, which is unusual. Greg Russ can add.
Just spoken with the WPS crew, Neil. The word on David Bernard's car, they believe, is a possible broken Watts linkage on that car, so he's trying to limp it back to pit lane at the moment.
Oh, and Todd Kelly's gone round and into the wall. He must have put the car up onto the ripple strip on the exit, and the race leader has whacked the inside wall on the pit lane, dislodged the front spoiler. Relatively light contact, but damage nonetheless. Pretty big damage on the front left guard. That will leave Mark Scaife in control of the race.
Can you believe that? Here's a replay of the start. Watch on the left of your screen. Car number 1, Marcus Ambrose, bogs it down. And look at these 2 Falcons on the outside. Scaife goes to second and Bridie comes through.
Watch back in the pack on the high shot. 4 cars abreast in that queue back there. Ritter's on the outside. Richo gets a tag, gets sideways. It was a Valvoline car that hit him. And the Castrol car sideways. Greg Ritter comes off second best. Whack, there it is. Car number 33 was in behind there. That was Cam McConville. And Ritter was unlucky, really, just in the wrong place. Mind you, you're pretty brave being out wide there. And trouble here. How does all this unfold?
Alex Davison in the Autobahn car
further up the road.
Oh! And that was Andrew Jones at the back of the pack in the Repco Valvoline car. And then here is Todd Kelly, gets it sideways onto the front stretch, gets up on the ripple strip on the white paint.
He'll be angry with himself when he sees that. Everybody in the business knows that those ripple strips are diabolical in these conditions, and when he stops to consider the fact that he was grip limited coming onto the straight, he probably didn't need to be out there anyway. And Todd Kelly's radio, and that was Matthew Crawford, the voice in the background, and bring it back into the pit lane and park it is the instruction. So frustration for him, possible race win being thrown away there, but the team owner, Mark Scaife.
There is Todd Kelly limping back to the pits. Meanwhile, this crash zone back there being cleaned up with both PWR Super Cheap Auto Commodores, Andrew Jones, Gary Rogers Commodore. Bernard has already made it back to the pits. Perhaps it was contact between Bernard and Paul Wheel that we just caught a glimpse of.
Here we go, there's more of it here. I just need to, there was a little contact here with Greg, but that was no big deal. It's further up the road and it's already happened.
Oh.
Yeah, clearly there was something happened between Bernard and Paul Wheel. What that something was, I don't know. And then that triggered all of the other action that you can readily see.
Top of your screen on the left, you can see the toll car limping away as well. That's Anthony Tratt. He was the first, perhaps the second, to contact Paul Wheel, and then Andy Jones came through with nowhere to go. So Mark Scaife inherits the lead from Marcus Ambrose, Jason Bright, Russell Ingall, Stephen Richards. Stephen Johnson has been a big winner in that one. And there is a very wounded Todd Kelly, Holden Racing Team Commodore, the victor yesterday.
It looks ugly. It looks ugly, and
we apologise for the language there. Obviously, we are live. That's out of our control. And Todd Kelly apologising to the team, and some colourful language there, just highlighting the fact of how frustrated he is.
like I said, when he looks at the replay later, he'll be cranky with himself for being up on the ripple strips on a day where there's no grip around, water on the paint, and the grip level just changes instantaneously under the car and it'll hit you around. But mind you, it's so easily done. But that'll be relatively superficial. It looks ugly that there may be some wheel alignment and other issues there, but they'll get that tidied up. The problem now when they park the car, of course, is that he goes to the back of the pack for the next one and pretty much puts paid to a decent weekend for car 22.
Didn't we just finish saying you don't want to be having a damaged car here?
Well, the weird thing
Adelaide
was
2 weeks away.
They all got through turn 1 and 3. It's usually the hot spots here pretty cleanly. It's unusual that all that stuff would unfold up at the top end of the circuit, but Greg can add.
crew chief for Super Cheap Auto Racing is John Panozzo, and this is not a good time with two cars in that sort of situation.
You're not wrong there, Rusty. The Grand Prix is not the place you want to be damaging your cars when we've got Adelaide in 2 weeks, and that's the first championship round, and that's when we really want to, have all guns blazing. But, wet track, cold tyres, the cars are moving around a fair bit. Look, there's just been a bit of contact. Paul's got turned around there, or, ended up facing the wrong way, and Greg's come up on him and tried to avoid the incident, and also, ended up spinning around and touching the wall. But Paul said there was a fair bit of damage on his car, and visually you can't tell too much. We'll just have to wait, get it till they come back, and we'll just have a look over them tonight. But I'm pretty confident we'll get them back, both back out there tomorrow. So
Leon Griggs?
Yeah, look, it's tapped the wall with the right rear. Look, I think it'll be just superficial panel damage. I don't think the suspension hopefully won't be damaged in any way. So we'll have a look tonight and go from there.
Let's go to it. Thank you.
A very disappointed Johnny Panozzo, team manager for PWR Super Cheap, and he's got some work ahead of him in the next fortnight, that's for sure. We'll squeeze in a quick break, come back and hopefully go racing when we return. Back live at Albert Park, race 2 of the Qantas V8 Supercars. We are still under the safety car, behind the safety car, under yellow, and they are crawling around after a fairly frantic opening lap, and the sun shining, track drying.
Look how quick those conditions are changing. That's a dry track up there in turn 11. Absolutely dry. Greg Rust.
A lot of radio chat emanating from the Stone brothers, from Barry, who looks after Russell Ingall's car, and of course from Paul Forgy, the #1 man on Marcus Ambrose's machine. Both drivers have been asking what the deal is. We've got a bit of blue sky above us now, and the forecast, the short-term forecast, the way they're talking for this race is that we may have dry conditions for the bulk of it. The drivers are asking, can we change tyres? As I understand it, Neil, under this race, you must continue to race and finish on what you started on. So for the bulk of this field, with the exception of the BOC Gases Fords, everyone is going to have to be very, very careful on these wet weather tyres if it does dry out.
I think you may well be right there, Greg, but you know what? I'm knee-deep in Formula 1 paperwork, and I don't have the sub-regs of the V8 race at my fingertips, but I will get you back for that at some point, you can rest assured. But I think you're right, and the reason for that, and it's common sense, is that the pit lane is congested with all of the Formula 1 apparatus, and typically here you're not able to come in. You can deal with damage and what have you, but you can't come in and start rattling wheels and tyres on and off, and there's just not enough time. But we made the point a moment ago of there being dry track up the back. That's a slick, and we previously saw the Dunlop control wet. But down on the eastern and the southern side of the track, it's still quite wet. You'd be a brave boy to go slicks at the moment, although Brad and John are out there on slicks and they're waddling up the field.
And confirmation from race control, they must stay on these tyres unless there is a puncture or some damage.
Yeah,
so here we go for Team BOC. Hang on for the ride. John Bowe, Brad Jones
Stop on me, mate.
on slicks, but they are a long way down the field. John Bowe back in 23rd and Brad Jones in 26th. There's a lot of work to do from back there.
Well, and if you're on wets and this track dries out, there's no way you can make it to lap 19 without murdering them. Todd Kelly, incidentally, is in the pits, and there's the damage on the front of that car. Brand new car for him. Safety car's now boosted its speed up to 80 kilometres an hour. They've been able to clear the debris at the top end of the circuit. Anthony McDonald there on the front left corner of the car, just having a look and assessing the damage. There's probably not a lot to be gained by doing a big scramble and getting it out there, unless they determine that there might be some valuable test knowledge to be gained.
Updating you on a couple of big movers in this pack. Jamie Whincup has had a terrific weekend so far. He finished yesterday's race in 14th for the Tasman team. He is now running in 8th. And Steve Ellery for 888 Better Electrical, he went from 23rd to 15th, and now Ellery is in 10th. So he's made up 13 positions from where he started yesterday's opening Qantas V8 Supercar race. Great stuff for the 888 team. His teammate,
See, up
Craig
here,
Lowndes, back in 19th. Sorry, mate.
Up here at 5, it's still patchy wet, and you've only got to ask Jack Villeneuve what it's like up there when it's like the car accepts quite a lot of load through that corner, and if it's dry on the way in, you'll be encouraged to use it. But if the grip breaks away in the middle of the corner, then there's very little runoff, as you can see to the outside there. Been a couple of spectacular offs there in years gone by in both V8 and Formula 1. Also quite hard to pick the conditions of the road up here at the approach to 6, because the road just kinks slightly left and it goes under some very large trees up there, and you can see the shadows on the road, Lee, and it actually makes it quite hard to determine. You think to yourself on these days, is that wet or is that dry? But you soon find out when you arrive up there and put your foot on the brake if you arrive a bit hot.
And speaking of big movers, let's talk about the Orcon Ford. There it is right there. Jason Bargwanna has come from 27th on the grid up to 12th. Huge move.
There'll be a little bit of benefit from some of the chaos up the top, but that's certainly a big move, and we're not fully informed at the moment as to who's on what tyres. I'd be curious to know whether there is anybody else in the field that's on slicks other than the 2 Brad Jones Racing cars. And when we resume racing and the pace car, safety car lights are out, it'll be Scaife, Ambrose, Bright, Ingle, Richards, Stevie Johnson, Cam McConville, Jamie Whincup having a good debut with that team, Will Davison and Stephen Ellery. That's the top 10 with Glenn Seaton just outside.
All right, looking forward to going back to racing. It should be a good scrap at the front. Mark Scaife in the Holden Racing Team Commodore. Marcus Ambrose for Stone Brothers Racing. Jason Bright for Ford Performance Racing. Then Russell Ingall. We got the big name boys at the front of this field. And Will Davison, another significant mover. He's inside the top 10 in 9th. Darryl.
Okay. Well, Todd, obviously a great day yesterday, but disappointing now. What happened?
Oh, absolute nightmare. The car was going really well. I got a good start and again had a nice gap. And for the lap that we were racing, I held the gap quite well. And just behind the safety car, warming the tyres up, I got the left rear wheel up on the curb and the car stepped sideways, and I just went straight to the stops and ran out of lock, and it went round, but not the way you want to put yourself out of the race.
As long as it's not Adelaide.
Yeah.
Here we go, back to racing, and Ambrose was all over Scaife. Bright was all over Ambrose, but no advantage there. McConville has a quick look on the inside of Johnson, but they file through as in their position. Bargwanna comes around the outside there in the Orcon Ford. Davison scrapping it out there as well, but it's Scaife that leads the pack.
Always a nervous time after a safety car intervention because of the proximity of cars to each other. Oh, somebody was on the grass on the right-hand side, braking approach then to 3 in one of the 888 cars. Was that Lowndes? Boy, he was crossed up.
He's back there fighting it out with Tony Longhurst. Longhurst was that far back after his skirmish with Brad Jones yesterday, so they're scrapping it out. There's Matthew White there.
I reckon, in fact, it might have been Stephen Ellery in 10th, but one of the 888 cars was seriously out of shape under brakes going into turn 3.
You'll notice on the graphic there, we highlight whether they've advanced positions or lost positions by the little red triangles on the screen. There's Rick Kelly. He's had a tough weekend after starting from toward the back of the field, the very back of the field, I should say, in today's race, slowly making his way forward.
Contact yesterday up in turn 3 in the opening lap with Jason Bargwanna, and his event unravelled quickly. Track position, as it is with all V8 Supercar races, just supremely important. You just can't afford to be back there. There are too many good cars, too many good operators, and you don't make much ground on these guys when you give away hundreds of metres in a scenario like that. We're coming round shortly to end the first lap of this restart. See how Scaife is holding up against Ambrose with pressure from Bright, Ingle, Richards. Here they are, exiting turn 13. Oh, Stephen Richards has run wide down there. Several of them gone with him.
Looked like the Gary Rogers machine went with him as well. They are top 10 runners.
That was McConville.
And Stephen Johnson has halved his starting position. He went from 15th to 10th yesterday. Today he's gone from 10th to 5th, and that's Alex Davison and Paul Morris off in the gravel trap. And Davison is a long way in. Back at the front though, Scaife v Ambrose. Ford versus Holden. Marcus has a think about it on the inside. He's not close enough to Scaife though. There's a decent gap back as Russell Ingall has leapfrogged Jason Bright. Johnson is applying the pressure, and a great run by Will Davison and Jamie Whincup, I should say, who's up into 6th now. Will Davison is shadowing him in 7th. Watch here, move on Ingall, on Bright, under brakes, easily done. Right, he gave him a fair bit of room there.
He gave him a lot of room. I'd say it was probably because he thought there was going to be serious chaos, but that was a very nervous moment for both drivers there. Russell was going into uncharted waters and the slippery stuff on the inside. Fastest man on the track at the moment is Mark Skaife at 15.4, but he's only barely quicker than Ambrose. You can see how close he is. Russell Ingall then a gap back to him.
There is Craig Baird's WPS Falcon in pit lane, not where the Kiwi wants to be. It looks pretty much like race over for Craig Baird and his new team. Back at the front, great scrap going on here. Ambrose came home yesterday in second place, and he said at the end of the event that Todd Kelly just had too much. He could not make up that ground. He had a pretty fast car, but he just couldn't catch him. He's right with our race leader now, Mark Skaife. Greg.
Well, Craig Baird, what happened?
I was just turning into a corner over the back, and it almost looked like Davison in the Autobahn car had a jammed throttle or something, because he just cracked into Morris and then bounced Morris into me and just bent all the steering. But he sort of came up the inside with probably 30 or 40k quicker than us, so I'd say he had some sort of issue.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, mate.
Tough break for Craig Baird. Meanwhile, this thrilling battle at the front. Ambrose thinks about it, has a look, not quite close enough in turn 15. Mark Skaife far too experienced for that. Was there contact? Slight. Now Ambrose thinks about it on the inside at 16. He's hit Skaife. Skaife goes sideways but holds on to the lead, and Ambrose roughing him up.
Big pressure.
Nice work, Marcus. Just keep it clean. Keep your tyres cool.
Remember that these guys are tippy-toeing. 12-1 apiece for both of them on that lap. They're separated by just thousandths of a second. 2-second margin over Ingall. And they've got to look after the rubber.
Russell Ingall, the fastest lap at a 2:11.83 from Jason Bright, Steve Johnson. What about the young guys coming through? Jamie Whincup for Tasman and Will Davison for Team Dynamic. Superb performance in 6th and 7th. Ellery, one of the big movers. Bargwanna's come from 27th to 9th. And then Stephen Richards back in 10th after that slight error earlier on. But it's fast and frantic at the front.
Marcus was really hustling there as they came towards the line at the completion of that previous lap. Just rubbing gently on the rear of Skaife's car, looking for a way to unseat him or pass him. And the trick here for a mature operator like Skaife is not to react and not for you to suddenly have a burst of temper, just to stay cool under pressure and stay focused.
Jason Richards defending there from Lowndes, and here's the replay in the final turn. Contact there in the rear. Mark Skaife caught it, accelerated out of it. Nice work from the multi-time champion.
Fastest man on the racetrack, 11.8, Russell Ingall.
Craig Lowndes giving Jason Richards a work over here.
And where are they in the order at the moment? Back in 12th and 13th. Just in front of them, Glenn Seaton. Mark Winterbottom just behind. Vigorous battles going on up and down the field wherever you look at the moment.
And that is a tremendous performance from Craig Lowndes, who's come from 31st to 12th. There's been substantial move in the pack.
Rick Kelly's on the charge there as well, and he just put a move. I think it was on Glenn, so he's actually making significant ground too. Yellow flag still being displayed down there at turn 13.
And I'm certain that Steve Chalker, Dick Johnson from West Point Racing will be joyed by the performance in this race by both their drivers, Stephen Johnson and the new man on the scene, Glenn Seaton. Steve Johnson's running in 5th. Seaton has come from well down the order to be in 11th. If they can have both cars in the top 10 in this second race, that's a great start to 2005. Brand new car for Seaton, incidentally.
2:10.5 for Skaife on that lap, 2:10.6 for Ambrose. 0.3 of a second, the official margin. Ingall's closed up a little as well. Look at this angry bunch.
Hang on, hang on. Lowndes has now gone one ahead of Stephen Richards, so he continues his forward surge. Richards is in the middle of the pack. Then it's Jason Richards. And look at Rick Kelly pushing his way through. He's right there with Jason Bargwanna, and Seaton is the next one in the line. Bargwanna is on the inside. He's looking for a way through on Richards. He's got him too. Nice work. In fact, that's Mark Winterbottom. My apologies. And he hip and shoulders him off the circuit. Richards comes back on the inside. And Winterbottom rounds him up. Rick Kelly looking for a way through now.
Certainly there's some pace in the 15 car at the moment. The HSV dealer team entry of Rick Kelly. He's making a lot of progress, putting moves on people. Almost suggests he's on the different rubber. Through. So Rick Kelly up another spot. puts a good move on Jason Richards. To be Richards all together there at the moment. Stephen in 11, Jason Richards in 3. Disappointing day yesterday for Stephen Richards. We spoke to him just at the start of the race. Great pace, perfect performance in the open practice session.
John Bowe getting frustrated there with Matthew White, looking for a way past. If you didn't see the broadcast yesterday, you may be getting a little tricked with cars that look very similar to the Holden Racing Team Commodores. They are the HSV dealer team cars of Garth Tander, Rick Kelly. There's some slight differences in the livery. There's more black on the HSV cars of Tander and Rick Kelly. Also on the front, you'll notice the sponsorship from Viante Cars. You have to look carefully to pick it. But they are running in the middle of the pack there. That's how it's easily picked. Mark Scaife, the sole remaining Holden Racing Team Commodore, is leading this race and is the fastest man with a 2-minute 10-second lap time.
I'm surprised that he's still managing to circulate at that kind of pace, which is about 10 to 12 seconds off the dry weather pace around here. Clearly they're still getting away with it with those wet tyres on the car. Just opened up a little bit of a margin over Ambrose.
Look at Davison on the inside, Neil. Look at this. He's got Johnson. Beautiful setup. The man who had Formula One aspirations himself, who tested a Minardi Formula One car, now finds himself full-time in V8 Supercars, and he begins the chase on Jamie Whincup. These two young guys have been impressive. Round Stephen Johnson up. Johnson is under attack. Barguana's in the middle of that with Ellery. He pushes him aside, and Stephen Johnson is under siege. Great scrap here within the top 10. This is for 5th place.
Fastest man actually down through the field at the moment. Position 20 is Greg Ritter. He's done an 8.6.
So Jamie Whincup has found a way through. Will Davison has found a way through. Barguana's looking for the door now. Has he got it on Steve Johnson? Yes, he has. The Orcon Ford overtakes the West Point Falcon. And Barguana, after starting in 27th, gains yet another position.
Brad Jones has now gone quick. So it's just coming into a phase in the race where the cars on slicks are doing the business, and we're just double-checking our facts on this at the moment, but to the best of our knowledge from the information supplied by the Dunlop engineers, the only 2 cars in the field on slicks are the 2 Brad Jones racing cars. We just want to verify that and make sure that there's nobody else making pace.
And plenty of time remain for Team BOC. Look at this. Ambrose again hassling Scaife. Goes the outside option this time through turn 16.
Trying to crisscross him in the last corner.
And it didn't pay off that time round. Just getting back to that point for Brad Jones and John Bowe. There is a long time left, Neil. Still another 9 laps. Time enough to do it, or too far? Distance is too
wide?
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
You know, anything's possible. Just depends on the weather, and the weather still looks very weird up there in the distance. So, you know, what will happen here is the cracking pace that these guys are making on wets will really start hurting the tyre, and everybody will do what you can see in the background there at the moment, go searching, looking for a bit of moisture. Any little drop here or there will help preserve the tyre.
Stephen Ellery in his debut drive for 888. Better Electrical Racing gets another position. He moves ahead of fellow Queenslander Stephen Johnson. So it's Scaife, Ambrose, Ingle and Bright. There's a huge gap between Ingle and Bright. Then you go back to Jamie Whincup and Will Davison, Jason Barguana, Steve Ellery, Steve Johnson, and now Craig Lowndes, who has come from the back of this pack. He was elevated many positions due to those incidents, but you've got to work your way through them. It's a little bit of luck, but it's also skill, and he's put in a tremendous drive. The 888 Fords are flying, and remember, this is their meeting with Stone Brothers Power on board.
Yeah, there are a lot of things to detail about changes in the V8 paddock. So much has gone on in the last couple of months since we saw the cars racing at Eastern Creek in the grand finale last year for Big Pond, and teams have had internal shuffles with technical personnel. There's been new commercial deals done. There's been drivers shifted around. And here's Bowe down the inside of Winterbottom. So he's making progress on slicks. Substantial progress now. The tyres are warming up. The track's drying. Is he going to be able to get through to the end of this race, lap 10 of 19, without any more moisture dropping out of the heavens?
And it wasn't that long ago that we said John Bowe was in 26th place. Now he finds himself in 14th. In fact, it's higher than that because he's overtaking them. very, very quickly as he comes up on one of the HSV dealer team cars.
He's just passing Rick Kelly, who was making a lot of progress early on, and that made me wonder whether or not Rick was on slicks, but I don't think he is, looking at the pace of the car now.
Bow's flying, the BOC machine. New sponsorship for Brad Jones Racing this year, and we will follow the progress of John Bow. Now coming up on Stephen Johnson, who's slipping backwards after being as high as 5th. The West Point Falcon driver seems to be in some kind of trouble.
And right about now, lap 11 of 19, they've been out there for long enough. The tyres, the wet tyres just start to get this terrible feeling about them. And when you turn the car in, the whole thing has a lurch while the tyre bag has a set. John Bow's now done a 2:06.5 to further improve the fastest lap of the race. And it's quite unnerving, but you learn to understand what the car's going to do, and you can kind of predict it. And that's what they'll be doing at the moment. And the smart blokes will be very judicious with the throttle, trying in the second gear corners to not excite the rear tyre too much. It's very easily done.
Team Better Electrical beat up on the Orcon Falcon of Jason Barguana. And here comes John Bow. He is flying. To put it into perspective, the race leader Mark Scaife has put in a very respectable lap time last time around of a 2:08.9 and Bow a 2:06.05. John Bow is flying, and instantly he's with the Better Electrical cars.
And his teammate Brad Jones only 3 1/1000ths of a second slower than John on that last lap, so the two of them almost locked together for pace, and Bow just continues to march up here. He's going to have bags of performance compared to these guys that are on dying wets.
Again, if you've just joined us, welcome. You're watching race 2 of the Qantas V8 Supercars. The big difference in performance here, the rest of the cars in the field, to the best of our knowledge, are on wet weather tyres, while John Bow, Brad Jones, well, we were kind of giggling at them at the beginning, weren't we? Saying, brave boys going out on slicks in wet conditions, but now it has paid off. They did take a very detailed look at the radar. So another 2 positions just like that as he rounds up the Better Electrical Falcons. And now Barguana is the next one on his list. Under brakes, not quite close enough.
No, you've still got to be very careful. All Barguana just gets the car out of the dry groove there, and it's enough for him to just overshoot slightly, and John got an easy place then. It's a replay of some of the action down at turn 1.
Stephen Richards is under pressure here. And look at this, that's Matthew White coming through on Tony Longhurst, is it?
Yes. Hard to do it from the dirty side of the road. By being that close to the right-hand side of the road, you make the corner radius at turn 1 even tighter. Fastest lap, John Bow, 2:06.05, and that'll further improve, no doubt, on this lap, depending on how much he was held up. Actually, it was just a fraction slower that lap because he was negotiating a couple of cars along the way.
Barguana has surrendered to the Better Electrical boys. 888s, Craig Lowndes, Stephen Ellery, they go through on him. Now the next one on John Bow's list is young Will Davison for Team Dynamic, and then also Jamie Whincup.
You know what's amazing, Lee, is that both Mark Scaife and Marcus Ambrose have continued to keep their wets alive somehow and continue to go very quick. Their last laps were almost identical. A 2:08.92 plays at 2:08.97. So they're still making pace on the wets, and they're further tumbling their time. So it may not be obvious to the camera, but in certain parts of the circuit, clearly the wet is still being protected, and it's still probably the tyre to have in some phases of the racetrack.
I'm intrigued to know what the problem is with Steve Johnson. He has slid right down the order to back into 13th in the 17 West Point Ford. Meanwhile, another one on the list. It's gone. That's Will Davison. He's out of the way. Whincup is next on John Bow's list, and Jason Bright is inside as well.
Brad Jones was 24th off the start, and he's already moved up to 12th. John Bow's up to 7th.
Good effort. Very good effort. Great day. Here we go. Next one.